Hey everyone, happy Friday and welcome back to Mavens of Manufacturing. I know I've been silent for the last couple of weeks, but we had some cancellations and then IMTS was last week and there was no way I was trying to do a live broadcast during that week. But today I'm super excited because I have two individuals from FactoryTwin. If you were paying attention to IMTS, we had Vivek on in the Creators Lounge talking about FactoryTwin and some of the things that they are doing to bridge technology with manufacturing. And Natalie and Katelyn here today are going to extend on that conversation, but we also get to hear a little bit about them because guess what? They're in the software development area, and we don't have too many women in that area. So I'm super excited to hear about both of your journeys and how you're doing at FactoryTwin and some of the things that you're working on. So ladies, welcome to Mavens of Manufacturing. How are you?
Thank you. It's good to be here. I appreciate you having us on and giving us a spotlight.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm super excited to talk to you. So let's start off with your background. Can each of you, share your story of, how you got started, especially within computer software development and computer engineering, and then how that journey led to FactoryTwin? The conversation we had before this, I was really interested in like some of the challenges you face. So Katelyn, do you want to start first?
Sure, yeah. So I actually originally went to school for theater right out of high school. And it's sort of a windy road that then led me over to computer science and eventually to FactoryTwin.
Mm-hmm.
I think in terms of pursuing computer science, for a really long time, it wasn't something that I even considered. I had a web design class in high school that I really enjoyed, but going into college, it never really crossed my mind. However, I always did really enjoy math and pretty much generally any of my science classes. And so when I decided to go back to school for the second time, computer science was, something that I thought, well, maybe I'd be interested in that. Maybe I'd like doing that. So I was like, well, I'll take a couple classes. I'll feel it out. I'll see. And then, long story short, I wound up getting my degree in computer science from the U of M, and here I am.
That's awesome. And the U of M is University of Minnesota because
Yes. Yep.
U of M in Wisconsin is Madison. So that's why I want to clarify that because some people get those two confused. One of the interesting things that you mentioned before, too, Kate, is the similarities that you found between theater and what you're doing now. So can you kind of go over those? Because I thought that was really interesting because not a lot of people who fall into this industry from other types of industries make that connection. I think it's into our audience to hear some of the similarities and connections that you made. So can you go over those real quick?
Yeah, definitely. So, a lot of times people are usually surprised when they hear, oh, you did theater and then computer science, like those are so different. But really a lot of things are similar between them. So when I was doing theater, I was doing stage managing, which is essentially, kind of organizing, making sure everything's running smoothly. That's really similar to what I'm doing here at FactoryTwin. So I'm our engineering manager, which means that I kind of plan our timelines. I look at what are all of our customer commitments, as well as, other features that we might be adding independent of any customer requests. And then I'm also looking at, how many people do we have? What is their skill set? And how can I match up the tasks that need to get done with the people that we have? And so that part is really similar to what I did in theater, where it was, you have like a whole bunch of people, all with different skill sets, all with different backgrounds, and you have to figure out how can all those people come together to make something collaboratively that is then shared with an audience, whether that's, a physical audience or your customers who use your software. I would imagine in manufacturing, it's also very similar where, you have, people who are more into the like engineering and they know how the product needs to be made. You have your supply chain people who know how to acquire your product. You have your shop floor people who know how to run the machines, and you have to figure out how can you get all of those different people and their skills to work together to create one product that satisfies your audience's needs.
Yeah. So Natalie, before we get to you, I do want to point out that Hank is in here. Hey, Hank, thank you for joining us. Anyone who else is Feel free to drop your comments or questions in the comment section. I did have to pull Hank in here and say happy birthday to Aiden. His daughter turned 10 today, and she loves Mavens of Manufacturing. So Aiden, happy birthday. I hope you're having a great one. I know that he made you waffles this morning, and I'm super jealous. So congratulations on being 10. Natalie, what about you? How did your journey get started in computer science and software development?
Yeah, so I was always a STEM kid, but I was hardcore pre-med probably since the start of high school. So I was so confident I was going to be an OBGYN one day. But about halfway through college, it really started to hit me just how many years of schooling medical school is. Freaked me out a little bit. So then I thought, okay, like what else do I like? You know, I watched quite a few engineering documentaries. I like the idea of building things. So then I tried switching to mechanical engineering. Got to mechanical engineering, realized I kind of hated physics. So I don't think that was going to work out too well for me. But in doing that, I was required to take a computer science course. And I had really I knew nothing about it, heard nothing about it. I went in with pretty low expectations, but it ended up being one of my favorite classes that semester because it's like I had found a corner of STEM where, it's still very mathematical and very logic based, but there's also not just one solution to a problem. And I think that computer science leaves a lot of room for creativity. And I think that blend was something that I hadn't found in any of the other STEM fields that I had been in at that point. So switched my major, I think it was my junior year, to computer science, and finished out with that degree. And then with design specifically, I had two friends trying to do a software startup. And when I saw what they had made for their landing page, it was truthfully hideous. It looked like it was made in PowerPoint. So I thought, okay, well, I can do better than that. Let me take a stab at it. And then I didn't realize that was a job. And I had a lot of fun doing that because I, took a few graphic design electives in high school and had really enjoyed that as a hobby. So then on top of my bachelor's, I joined one of the University of Minnesota's continuing education professionalism programs. I got a certificate in UI and UX design. And then it's been nice here at FactoryTwin because I kind of get to use both my degree and that certification. So I get a really nice blend of I'm designing, I get to be, very traditionally creative in that sense, but then I still get to be technically creative in coding as well.
Really cool. So when you both finished school, you headed straight into FactoryTwin, correct? Like, what was the connection there?
Yep.
You started as an intern for the company?
Yep.
You want to explain that process and how you found that internship out? Because I'm asking personally, because from personal experience, when I was going through college, there wasn't a lot of direction on like what types of groups to connect with and get involved with internships. So I think it would be helpful for some of our audience, especially any students who are like struggling to find where to go and place themselves. I think it would be helpful to know that some of these things exist that you guys were connected to. So can you explain that process a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. So for me, this would be like spring of 2021 when I was looking for internships. And there's a program called SciTech Minnesota that connects essentially interns with small businesses who are seeking out those internships. And I had posted my resume on that website. And then Vivek had saw my resume and had reached out to me asking if I'd be interested in an internship. I think also it helped that I was a student at the University of Minnesota. I think a lot of connections are able to be made then just through the U of M, whether that's through SciTech or, they have a handshake place as well where you can post your resume and look at internships too.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Natalie?
So kind of similar. I had also posted my resume on SciTech. Truthfully, I wasn't really looking for internships at the time. I didn't have any mentors from the computer science field at the time I was in college, so I didn't really understand how important the internships were. But because I had posted my resume online, Vivek had found me and reached out to me, and I was able to get an internship that way. And when I started here, it was more for design. Kind of my first project was redesigning our website. And then the longer I stayed here, there was definitely opportunity for software development as well. So naturally, I just started picking up a bit more of the development work and transitioned to full-time here.
So I want to get into a little bit of FactoryTwin. And as I mentioned before, I already spoke with Vivek at IMTS, which was a really informative conversation because there's a lot of technology coming into the manufacturing space. And IMTS started out as a machine show. So it was mostly focused on machines, people going there, buying and selling their machines. And then this year, I mean, in 2022, there was a presence of technology, but they really focused on it this time around, which was really interesting. And FactoryTwin seems to be at the intersection of technology and manufacturing. So how does each of your work really contribute to bridging that gap between manufacturing and technology? And Natalie, do you want to start?
Sure. So because I'm a little bit more on the design side, a lot of what I have to do is talk directly to those that are working for manufacturing companies, a lot of the engineers or functional leaders there. And what a big part of my job is understanding their pain points, their frustrations, really digging into, what's your wish list item, if software could solve anything in your job, like what would it be? What would make your life easier? So a lot of what I have to do involves direct communication with them and understanding what their day-to-day looks like, and then taking those insights and compiling them all together and trying to create a solution that targets each of those pain points, and then turning that back over to them and asking, like, did I hit the mark? Does this look like something that's going to help you out? And if the answer is no, it's back to square one, back to the drawing board. We'll start over and we'll think of something new. But then once I get that stamp of approval that they're like, yes, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I want, then it's time to start developing it.
How about you, Katelyn?
Yeah, so I think to add on to Natalie's answer here, we work with small and medium-sized manufacturers, and a lot of times, they'll have data, they'll be collecting data, and they might not be super familiar with what are the different approaches that they can take to do analysis on that data, and what are sort of the different opportunities they can find through analyzing that data. So more than just a software company, we're also like a consultant as well. So when we go in and start working with a new customer, we really get involved in trying to understand, where is their data being stored, how are they currently collecting it, and helping to kind of train and educate them as well on what are those best practices for how to be making those data-based decisions on a day-to-day basis. Additionally, also, we're actually starting to do some training programs in working alongside some of the community colleges here in Minnesota, and as well as some local manufacturing companies. And so those training programs are going to help kind of try to bridge that gap where, getting new manufacturers into the workforce, but making sure they also can have that training to help them understand how they can be using data and data analytics more frequently.
That's super cool. So then, you two have different roles at FactoryTwin, and sometimes there can be misalignment. So at FactoryTwin, how do you make sure that, you know, each of your roles is really aligned with the mission there at the company? Like how is your process of working together and collaborating together?
Yeah, so I think that, you know, we're all pretty united around, you know, our purpose, and we're usually working together on the same client projects, even if our day-to-day jobs don't look the same. We're all, you know, working towards making the same people happy and making their lives easier. So I know a lot of what we do to stay on the same page is, especially when it comes to making new features, is going to be design reviews. So not only do I have to review my designs with the end users, the people who are, you know, receiving the product, but I need to make sure that the whole software team, our whole pipeline of our software is aligned on, you know, what's the goal of this feature, what should the outcome for somebody be when they use it, because it's, you know, it's very possible it's happened before where perhaps I make a design around a misunderstanding I have about how data is being read in. But then when I host a design meeting and I pull in somebody like Katelyn, whose domain is much more on the database side of our tool, she can correct that misunderstanding, and we can, you know, alter the design together and figure out something that she, you know, gives a stamp of approval. This is going to work on the data side. I give the stamp of approval. This is going to work on the usability side for our clients. So it's really easy to stay in constant communication. Katelyn and I have a desk across the room from each other, so we're talking constantly.
Hey, Natalie, come look at this.
I remember sitting across people like that, but we would always use Slack for whatever reason instead of, because we never knew like if they had their headphones on, if they were doing something. So it was funny how like we'd be right across from each other, but still use Slack. Natalie, when you're going through that design process, are there specific key elements that you're like prioritizing when designing some of these interfaces for manufacturing applications?
Yes. So I think one of the main things I like to keep in mind is user flow. It is so important to understand how the conclusions from, you know, one of our data visualizations, how do those conclusions feed in to the next one? So I'm always trying to keep in mind, like, what's the flow of information on a singular page? What I'm also thinking of is how many clicks does it take for somebody to get to A to Z? You know, I'll sit there and I'll count. And what I'm trying to do is minimize the number of steps, because, you know, a part of what we want to do here at FactoryTwin is make people's lives easier and more efficient, and, you know, shortening the path to answers and to insights is what's going to save people time. So that's probably top of mind whenever I'm designing something new.
It's like the new crossword puzzle or Sudoku. Like
Yeah,
it's really fun to do, just as like, because yeah, there's a lot of websites that try to make the journey less complicated. And how do you do that? You don't want them clicking, because it gets mundane and drawn out, and it's just
it does.
boring.
And then that's just more paths for somebody to get lost. You know, if you can minimize it and you can make getting answers direct, it's just a way better situation for everybody.
Katelyn, one of my questions for you, you know, everything is constantly evolving and technology is constantly changing. So what are some of your biggest challenges when you're leading a team in this type of industry with things constantly changing and evolving? Because I find part of things really interesting, because you have to constantly update things as it's changing. So can you talk about some of your biggest pain points and challenges that you face?
Yeah, definitely. So I'd say to start with, you know, our onboarding process has kind of seen some of those challenges where some of the technology stack that we have, some of our coding languages that we use are not super common. And so a lot of times new hires or interns won't be as familiar with that. And so there is a bit of that learning curve that takes place as we onboard new people.
Okay.
we've kind of tried to work to shorten that process by we have like an onboarding buddy. So whenever someone starts here, they get assigned to someone that they can go and ask questions to, they can work with, as well as, we try to have documentation on little examples of how to little guides for doing different software development tasks. So I think that sort of helps make sure that new members to the FactoryTwin team are able to get up to speed quickly with what we're doing. And then also I'd say, like, additionally, our current team members are really good at, are very interested in reading and learning about what new developments are happening in the world of technology. And oftentimes, even, if we're just sitting around at lunch, one of our coworkers will bring up, like, oh, did you hear this new, development was made, Google put out this new platform or whatever. And so oftentimes we'll just chat about that kind of stuff over like lunch break as well. So I think just kind of making sure that, like, we're staying on top of what new developments are happening and then sharing that with each other within the team to make sure that everyone's kind of aware of what's going on.
So one of the questions I had was directed towards Natalie, but I think this is a question for both of you, because the role of feedback is really important to help progress manufacturing forward, especially with all the technologies coming out. So can you each touch on how that role of feedback really plays in shaping your designs and how you incorporate that feedback in not only the design process and developmental process, but also leading the engineering side of things? So Natalie, do you want to start first?
Sure. So I touched on it briefly that when I'm designing, I'm trying to listen very, very closely to what the engineers' frustrations are, what they like, what they don't like, what their dream feature would be. And, when I bring that back, I really try to boil down and get to the bottom of what are they asking? What are the required insights that need to come out of this? What kind of flexibility are they looking for? Maybe with different filtering or slicing of data. What data do I have access to? And when I take that and I wrap it up all into a design, if it's not solving the issues for them that I think they are, then there's no market for that feature. So of course, it always has to be sent back to them, the UI of it, but also I'll have to document the logic behind it and how the data is going to be processed in order to, display the data visualization that we're doing. And you can't move on and you can't put developer time towards writing the code if the end user does not check off and agree and say, this user interface makes sense to me. This seems straightforward. This is easily giving me the insights that I have asked for. Not only that, check off, like, this data that you're using sounds like it's coming from the right place. You are processing it in a way that makes sense to me. So, if you can get those levels of approvals, by the end of it, you should have a feature that is going to really help somebody in their day-to-day life. And at the end, you're going to have a satisfied client if you make sure you take all of those precautions.
Katelyn, what do you have to add to that?
Yeah, so I'd add on and say that, one thing that happens quite frequently is when Vivek is giving demos to potential customers, oftentimes they'll bring up, this is great. It would be really cool if it also had this other feature, or it would be great if, you had a chart that could look at this and this, because this is one of our pain points at the moment. And so oftentimes then Vivek will take that feedback and share it with the rest of the team and say, this might be a potential enhancement we could make, or this might be a new chart that we could add onto the software. And so I think in that way as well, we're always sort of collecting ideas from customers and potential customers to see what their needs are and what kind of things they're looking for at that moment.
Sounds super collaborative. And I do want to get to some of our comments because they've been kind of flowing in. So we have hello from California, Al. Thank you, Al, for joining us. I love your cowboy hat. Keep sporting that. And then we have Vivek on, who is so proud of you guys representing the FactoryTwin team. Vivek, thank you for joining us. They're doing an awesome job, by the way. Very well done. And then we have David Turner. Great episode. I have to jump to a meeting. Excited to watch the rest later. David, thank you for joining us for some of it. And then Leona is giving a plug to her company in Germany that support robot programmers with automated robot programming, simply collision-free and cycle time optimized. That's interesting, Leona. I'm going to have to connect with you after this to learn more about that. Now I'm curious. Katelyn, how do you balance innovation and practical application in engineering projects so that you can ensure that the technologies you develop are not just cutting edge, but also viable for your customers?
Yeah, so I think, like Natalie was talking about, we want to make sure that any features we're adding are also going to be useful. We don't want to just be adding a feature because we think that it would be an enhancement without receiving, that feedback that it's actually something that would be useful to our customers. When we first started, this was before either of us joined, but back when Vivek started this project, one of the things that he did was he did a survey of, I think, maybe like 50 or 60 different small and medium-sized manufacturing companies to kind of get a sense of what are common pain points, what are common issues that are being faced. And so, that survey and then that feedback that we've had ever since, like we were just talking about with customers and through the demos, that kind of drives what our innovation into our software is. So, obviously there's a lot of new technologies out there that have a lot of opportunities, but we want to make sure that anything that we're adding to the software is ultimately has the end goal of benefiting our users.
Very cool. And then Natalie, in your world, what are some of the trends that you are seeing for UI and UX design for manufacturing software, and how does the team at FactoryTwin really stay ahead of that curve?
I would say a lot of manufacturing software I've seen, a lot of it is pretty unstyled. It looks ancient, outdated. So outdated. So that's a really easy win for us. Is if I could stay ahead of the bare minimum and have something styled and consistent, that's already an easy win. But what I've noticed a lot with other manufacturing softwares, a lot of analytics softwares, is that there's a tendency to squish so much information in one place. I have seen tables with 50 plus columns and like a dozen tabs, and it doesn't fit on a page. You have to scroll forever, and it's seriously just an overwhelming amount of information. And I don't think that that's an effective way to communicate really any insight. So, a lot of what all of us here at FactoryTwin try to do is simplify what we're looking at. A lot of times, different analytics need to be broken down into smaller, more simple pieces. I even get that a lot, actually, in my requests from people when they're describing what they want. They're like, can I get a chart? I want it to have 3 axes, 12 different colors. I want one chart to answer these, 6 questions. And then, sometimes the requests I get are not even mathematically sound. So then it's my job to, boil down and say, what do they actually want? An exercise I do quite often is I try to boil down a request to just a few bullet points. What does this need to accomplish? And what data do I have to do it? And then from there, oftentimes, instead of maybe doing what somebody asks and, answering 6 questions in a very busy, hard to interpret visual, I might break it into 3 different visualizations that work together. that still answer all the same questions, but in a much more digestible format than maybe what was originally thought of. So I think that that's a strength of what we have going on here, is making very complex ideas and analyses as simple and broken down as we can.
Very cool. Well, I know FactoryTwin is newer. I think you guys are still considered technically a startup. So I'm curious to know, like, what are you both really excited about for the future of FactoryTwin, and the impact that you're going to have on the manufacturing industry? Because what you're doing is extremely helpful for manufacturers. So what are you most excited about?
Well, I think what I find most exciting about what I get to do here is seeing the reactions of either current customers that are working with the tool, or even prospective customers that are getting introduced to some of our features. But it's super rewarding to just see, like, some people are even just like baffled by the features we have, because they thought, like, I didn't know that software or data could solve such a thing. And I think that's, something that we have been doing, and of course we'll continue to do, is create that element of surprise with new features and solving things that people didn't think was possible in such a simple user interface, or in such a short amount of time, or with so little computing power. So I feel like that's what keeps me going at this job. I don't anticipate that changing anytime soon. But I think that's what's most exciting about working here, is getting that positive feedback from end users, that it is something that they need and that they want.
Katelyn, what about you?
Yeah, I'd say my answer is pretty similar as well. I get to kind of watch features go from a design that we sit down and draw on the whiteboard to design a kind of mock-up of what it's going to look like in Figma, to assigning which developers are going to work on it, reviewing it, and then occasionally I also get to kind of introduce those new features to our customers. So one of the benefits our customers receive with having a FactoryTwin software subscription is that they will get updates as we update the software. They will automatically get those enhancements to their software. So that's always really fun when I get to do an update and say, hey, by the way, you got a whole bunch of new features coming, and have a little meeting with them and go over, here's some added functionality, here's a new chart. And a lot of times they're really excited about that. And so it's really just exciting for me to get to share with them something that we've worked so long on, and getting to see that final benefit of we built this thing, and getting to see the people who are actually going to use the thing excited about it.
That's really cool. I love that feeling as well, when you work so hard on something and then you get that final product, and there's a little bit of anxiety because you don't know if it's going to work, and then when it does, it's awesome. So at IMTS, there was a lot of conversation around certain emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and digital twin and machine learning and augmented reality and virtual reality. How do you see these types of technologies really play a role in the future of some of your projects at FactoryTwin?
Yeah, so one of the kind of current pain points, I guess you could say, that many small and medium-sized manufacturers have is they have that data that they're collecting, but a lot of that data will have gaps in it, or it'll have inconsistencies in it. And so currently what we do is we have our factory validator module that reads in that data and will perform almost like an audit, you can think of it, on the data, then like looks for those gaps and those inconsistencies. And then we work side by side with the customers to help fill in those data gaps, whether that's through, collecting additional information that they might have stored in offline sources, or if those data gaps are information that they have in their minds, we can capture that in a template and read it in. But I think going forward, one of the things that we're really interested in doing more of is using AI for data imputation. So that means essentially, training an AI model to look at the data that does exist and then using that information to suggest potential data values for the places where there are gaps. So like an example of that could be, if there's a part and it's missing some standard times, which processes it goes through, which machines it goes through, but there's no times recorded for that. An AI model could then look at other parts and figure out which parts most closely resemble that part with the missing data, whether that's based on the size, shape, complexity of the part, or whether that's based on the actual routings that the part goes through. And then it could come up with suggestions for, based on similar parts, we think that this would be a reasonable standard time, and fill in those data gaps that way. So the benefit of that, of course, is that you're still being able to fill in those data gaps and address those data inconsistencies, but it doesn't require so much input and so much time from the subject matter experts in the factory we're working with to be able to accomplish that.
I think that's really, really cool. Natalie, do you have anything to add to that?
I would probably say something super similar, just because data health is such a pain point for so many manufacturers. And it's so foundational for any analytics tool to run off of. If you don't fix your data, you're getting no useful insights out of it. From any software. Using advanced technologies to target data health, I think is, probably going to be the biggest, most immediate payoff that we would be able to do.
That is super cool. Well, I want to turn the conversation to, empowering women in tech and manufacturing, because that's what Mavens is all about. And when we had our initial conversation, I found a lot of what you had to say about your experience in school very interesting. And I want to kind of share that information out to our audience, because I think it's important for our audience to know. And I want to encourage other women who might be experiencing some of those same feelings or challenges. I want them to know that, hey, it's going to be okay, because these two made it and you can make it too. And here's what not to do, and here's what you can do to kind of improve that. So one of the interesting things that you said to me is when you were taking these courses, a lot of the guys in the course seemed so much farther ahead because they were like doing coding and stuff outside of like the regular course. So they seemed a lot farther ahead. And you were hesitant to ask questions because as the only one or one of few women in the class, you didn't want to be the one to ask a dumb question as the woman. So can you kind of like speak through some of your experiences that you went through while taking these courses, and just maybe give some advice on like how to overcome those feelings of imposter syndrome? Because I really find it interesting, because with engineering specifically, globally, women only represent 13%. And then last year I was at an event where one of the stats that was talked about is we're not really losing women in engineering, but we're not really gaining them either. We're like at a stagnant percentage. So I really want to like encourage women who are interested in engineering to really pursue it and let them know that there are really great opportunities for them to use their creativity and be successful in careers like you two. So can you walk us through some of your experiences?
Sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
Do you want me to start?
I'll have you start.
Okay. So kind of like, you were explaining the background, Megan. you know, a lot of times in my computer science classes, especially the farther on I got towards the end of my degree, frequently I would be, you know, sometimes the only girl in the class, sometimes one of maybe 2 or 3. And so I sort of had this thought in my head that, you know, what if I ask a question and it's maybe a dumb question? Are all these other people in the class going to assume that I'm asking this dumb question because I'm a girl?
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, can be challenging to overcome. I think, you know, obviously asking questions is really fundamental to learning, and not only just to learning, but it's also a really good way to kind of build relationships with whether it's your classmates or your coworkers. You know, being able to ask questions and kind of show that openness to learning new things, I think is generally really important in any setting. So it can definitely hinder you if you feel scared to ask questions or you second guess, you know, all of your questions. I think partially what helped me with that is, you know, definitely coming and working here at FactoryTwin, I've gained a lot more confidence. I think, you know, having, you know, at the current moment, I've been here at the company for longer time than most of my coworkers, and so there's sort of a lot of times my coworkers will come and ask me questions. They'll seek out, you know, my opinion on things, and I think that has helped me over time kind of gain confidence and like, oh yeah, you know, my insights are valuable, my thoughts are important. I'd also say, you know, it's definitely been really amazing, the coworkers that we have. You know, all of the male coworkers here, like, have always treated us with respect. They've always sought out our opinions and valued that. So I think, you know, for any men listening, they can help too, just by, you know, making sure that their female coworkers feel valued, feel like they're heard, you know, like their voice is important. So I think kind of all of that together over time has helped me become more confident in terms of asking questions and not being worried to ask a question that is, you know, maybe something that many people know, but it's just, well, I don't know it yet. And if I don't ask, I'll never learn. So
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a good point too, because sometimes I feel like, and this isn't just for women, I think it's for men too, where we get inside our own heads and we automatically assume the worst in certain. So to prevent feeling embarrassed or like we're the only one, we kind of hold back asking some questions. And the best piece of advice I've ever gotten is like, you're in your own lane. And yes, some people are farther ahead of you, but there's also some people who are farther back than you. And everybody goes at their own pace on their own journey. So don't be afraid to ask a question that someone might always know. So I'm trying to like keep that top of mind, because there's still instances where I'm just like, feel really dumb here. Like, how, like, I don't want to ask this question because then people are going to laugh at me. And like, yeah, it's kind of a little silly as you get older. But Natalie, what do you have to add to that conversation? Because I know that you've had some similar experiences to Katelyn. So I just wanted to have you have an opportunity to share.
Yeah, so asking questions for me in college when I had transitioned to computer science was very difficult and very uncomfortable. Of course, there's, like Katelyn said, this element of embarrassment. You know, what are people going to think of me? I don't want to be like, who let this dumb blonde girl in the class? I just, you know, I was so petrified of being labeled like that. And I think it's hard to, you know, learn how to keep asking questions, because even sometimes I feel like I would ask questions and sometimes I would experience a rejection. You know, I've been told that my questions are stupid. And you know, I've had questions I ask go unanswered. I think I even asked a question in a class. I was super behind because I would let myself drown in my classes because I was so afraid to ask questions. And then, you know, when it's getting to the point where it's too late and I start asking for help, you know, I've been told like, why are you in this industry? if you don't know, this most basic thing that's so obvious to somebody else, but as somebody who's so new to it, didn't grow up coding since I was in middle school, didn't know what computer science was before the age of 20.
Yep.
It's really hard, and it's hard to push through that rejection. But when you just keep doing it over and over again, advocate for yourself, get the answers and the help you need. It's much easier said than done, but I certainly could not have made it through my degree if it was not for having a bit of persistence and not accepting no answer for an answer.
Yeah.
So it's hard. I think that you do have to brace yourself for a bit of rejection or a bit of judgment. But I think it's important to remember that that's not going to be every instance. And so what if somebody thinks I'm, just a stupid girl in their class? They're not going to remember me the next day. And whatever impression they have of me is not going to follow me very far. I'm not going to bring it into my professional career with me. And I think that, having made it out of school, I have learned and experienced that I can sit around a table full of men and, have my opinions valued, and I have a safer space to, ask the stupid questions so then you can keep up with those around you, and you can all be on the same playing field during a discussion.
Yeah. Jill made a comment, if it comes up. She said, remember hearing elsewhere, imposter syndrome, hesitancy to ask questions. Many will say, regardless of gender or experience level. In class, many are wanting to ask that question. Can't remember source now. They're relieved when question is asked. Yeah, and there are some tools out there now that I've come across where you scan a QR code and then you can ask a question anonymously, and it can get projected with everyone in the audience, which I think is really interesting. And everybody has access to that platform. And if they have the same question, they can vote on it and uptick it so that it gets above the rest, which I think is really interesting. I've mostly seen it in like presentation form at like trade shows and stuff, but I just think that would be cool if they had an option in some of those big lecture halls where there's like over 100 people. And then that way you're not like putting yourself in that spotlight where people are staring at you, because that's intimidating. Like, especially if you're an introvert person who doesn't like to be center of attention. I think that would be perfect. Hank said my girls struggle with that in class at school because they don't want to be laughed at. Kids can be cruel. Absolutely. And they have good teachers that encourage them immensely. So I hope they get through it. Definitely going to let them listen to this. Thank you. Hey, how that to be like ask those questions. It's a really important that they do. Jill said, I'm sorry, they've had this negative reaction. Yes, heard the class clicker thing like that. Yeah. And Hank, if I need to come down there or up there and yell at people, I'm all about it. I will stick up for your daughters. I think one of the important things, especially for manufacturers that are tied closely to technology, one of the important things that they can do to really encourage other women to pursue careers like software development and engineering is really have some sort of mentorship program involved. So can either of you, maybe shout out to one of your mentors and share a story of like how it really helped you keep pursuing what you're doing and really gives you that confidence to be where you're at in your career?
Absolutely. So for much of my college career, I worked in a lab under a female mentor. She was a postdoc. I was her research assistant. And she really showed me how to exude confidence in the workplace, and how to be loud and proud of your successes. I feel like when I started with her as a freshman, I was a bit shy, a bit apologetic, but she's very, very decorated, bunch of degrees. She does not shy away from showing off. she was just such a strong personality, such a leader that did not tolerate any disrespect. She also really showed me that, you know, people, regardless of your industry, this was not manufacturing, this was biomedical engineering, but that people are going to try to step on your toes. You know, you're not always going to have great coworkers like I get to have here. So, you know, she showed me people are going to try to step on your toes, but you need to stand up for yourself, and you need to, you know, make sure you establish that you are not going to be a person that can be messed with and a person that will not tolerate being disrespected. So I feel like after working with her for a few years, I think I developed much, much thicker skin and much more pride in all of my accomplishments. And I think of her often. I definitely try to carry the confidence I learned from her into my daily professional life now. It was so, so valuable to learn from somebody much more senior than I am, learn from her experiences and her mistakes before I've even made them. So especially to have a female mentor that, you know, walks in the same shoes that I do was so immensely valuable. And I could not have asked for a better mentor. So shout out to my friend Amanda Oliveira.
Awesome. How about you, Katelyn? Can you share a story of a mentor that you've had?
Yeah. So, you know, I was sort of thinking about when I first started here. And, you know, I didn't really know too much about some of the coding languages we used. You know, I had done projects in school, but a lot of times they're smaller projects. And, you know, you get to a company where it's this huge software and it's almost like, how do you even wrap your head around it at first? And I had some really great coworkers, you know, who, when I started, were really helpful in teaching me, kind of showing me the ropes. One thing that was really helpful, one of our coworkers, William, who no longer works here, but he was here when both of us started. And he was always so helpful in teaching people new things, answering questions. You know, I feel like I kind of, that's sort of, you know, I came in here being like, well, maybe I'll ask a dumb question and they'll be like, why did we give you this internship? And, you know, being able to ask what were, you know, maybe dumb questions at the time, and have him and the other people who were working here at that time always really helpful and receptive to it. And so as time has gone forward and we've had more and more employees join since the time when I joined, I've, you know, tried to kind of help carry that spirit forward of, you know, telling new interns and new employees, like, you can ask anyone anything. Don't feel like you're bothering us. You know, you're not bothering people by asking questions. We'd rather you come and ask us something than just hitting your head against the wall like for an hour on a problem that we might know how to solve. You know, so trying to kind of keep that spirit of how it was when I joined here forward for all the people who've joined since then.
I think that's really helpful too for like new employees. Like, I don't like going into new companies and everybody's afraid to talk because they're just so miserable. Because I've worked at those companies before, and it really just doesn't like help motivate you to learn anything. Jill said, I'm a life member of Society of Women Engineers. Member since college, was great support during different phases of career/college. I think that's an awesome shout out to that organization, because there are organizations like that one in women in 3D printing, women in manufacturing. And I always try to encourage companies, especially like smaller companies that might have 1 or 2 women or less than 5 women, to really become like company members for these organizations. Because then this way women have other women to connect with. And it's not like intentional to push men out, but like, it's easier for women to talk about certain things with other women. Like, I'm not going to talk about like my children issues that I have with my kiddos with some men. I'm going to talk to other moms about it because they'll like be able to relate easier. But we are almost out of time, Katelyn and Natalie, and I could talk to you probably for another hour because I just think you guys are fabulous and what you're doing is pretty cool and amazing. It's a really exciting time to be in this industry. And my whole point of talking with both of you ladies is to really show our audience members that women can thrive in engineering positions and computer software. And like, there's a lot that you can be done and you're on the edge of like new things happening all the time. I think Natalie, you said in our prior conversation, like your role is different every single day. So like you have a different title basically every single day. But I do want to give you a chance to ask a question for our audience. So if you had one question for our audience, what would that ask be for them?
Question for the audience.
Yeah. Do you mean like a question that like something we're curious in knowing about them?
Yeah, if you want to do it that way. If you can't think of a question, maybe consider a piece of advice that you would give to your younger self. So you can either ask a question or give out advice to your younger self. Which one do you want to do?
You do the advice, and then I'll
think of a question. You think on that
while you answer.
I'd say a piece of advice to my younger self would be that it's totally cool and totally okay to be nerdy and feminine. I remember a time in middle school where it was not cool to be the smart kid. It was not cool if your favorite color was pink. And you know, I remember a phase of my life. There was a day where the periodic table poster came off of my wall and was hidden in the closet. And, you know, a time where I said my favorite color was blue, despite the fact it is one of my least favorite colors. I'm a pink girl. So it's just, you know, I think that I was lucky and had some nerdier role models than a lot of others. But you know, there's just such pressure to conform at a really young age, and then suddenly you get a little bit older and there's pressure to be different, and it's not worth, you know, trying to mend yourself to those ever-changing expectations. Just, you know, you like is what you like, and there's nothing wrong with any of it. There's a place for everybody, you know, in the professional world and just in society. And, you know, I'm glad that I finally get to shine as, you know, a little girly and a little nerdy.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with that. You know, I think like there's no reason you can't like wearing sparkly makeup and also love learning about manufacturing. Like they're not mutually exclusive, you know? And I think a lot of times like even the women role models that are in manufacturing might be more kind of on more like a masculine leaning side. And so it's sometimes hard to think like, oh, like, can I do computer science? Can I do manufacturing? Because I like wearing, you know, pretty dresses and sparkly makeup. And is that something I can even do?
Yeah. It's very hard to feel like you belong somewhere where you don't see yourself represented, either in personality, in gender, race, anything. It's hard to convince yourself that like, yes, I am a part of one of these people. This is my group.
Yeah. I don't know where that assumption of you can be pretty, but you can't be nerdy, or you can be pretty, but you can't be intelligent. Like, I don't know where that started, and I'm happy to know that there's women out there that are like flaunting it without apologizing for it. And I think it's great because, yeah, like you mentioned before, representation matters. And if you can't see yourself in something, you're going to assume that you can't pursue it. So, yeah, I embrace my weird quirkiness, and like I'm a nerd through and through, and I look good. So I'm proud of that too. So if anybody has a problem with it, I don't care. So I think that's great advice. Well, Natalie and Katelyn, if anybody wants to reach out to you and ask you questions about yourselves or FactoryTwin, or, you know, what they should do pursuing some of the roles that you have, what is the best way to connect with you and where should they go?
Yeah, so both of us individually, we're both on LinkedIn. So you can always connect with us there. If you want to learn more about FactoryTwin, you can visit our website at factory-twin.com. And if you want more of Katelyn and I, we'll both be presenting at Manufacturers Alliance Manufacturer of the Year Awards ceremony on October 1st. So you can hear more from us.
That's awesome. Congratulations, ladies. Super proud of you for that. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this last hour. I really appreciate it. Anyone that's watching, feel free to reach out to them, connect with them on LinkedIn. If you are a manufacturer and you're having a hard time finding your brand voice, please stay tuned because we have a sponsored video from Z Ink Solutions. It's not your grandmother's typewriting or handwriting. We have content with some edginess to it and some pizzazz, so be sure to tune in for that. Bye, you guys. Have a great weekend.
Thank you so much, Megan.
Bye. This episode of Mavens of Manufacturing has been sponsored by Z Ink Solutions. Z Ink Solutions. This isn't your grandmother's copywriting service. We provide copywriting and copy editing services that provide impactful text and memorable storytelling for a variety of brands and industries. Contact us today at zinkSolutions.com. That's z-inksolutions.com.